Greetings and welcome to Monster Monday. It is the month of October, which means we will be speaking of spooky things.
Beginning with a gentle, not as deadly specter. You're asking yourself, Bill, how could you speak of spooky undead in the month of October? It'll kill a low-level party. No, it won't. There are lots of little things that you can use against low-level parties, like zombies and skeletons. But you might be looking for something that's not quite a killable thing, not quite a thing that can easily be physically destroyed, but could also give you a little bit more story. And that's where our friend the Spectre comes in. So let's dig right in. A Spectre is the angry, unfettered spirit of a humanoid that has been prevented from passing to the afterlife. Spectres no longer possess connections to who or what they were, yet are condemned to walk the world forever. Some are spawned when dark magic or the touch of a wraith rips a soul from a living body. When a ghost's unfinished business is completed, it can rest at last. No such rest or redemption awaits a Spectre. It is doomed to the material plane. Its only end, the oblivion that comes with the destruction of its soul. Until then, it bears out its lonely life in forlorn places, carrying on forgotten through the ages of the world. Living creatures remind the Spectre that life is beyond its grasp. The mere sight of the living overwhelms a Spectre with sorrow and wrath, which can be abated only by destroying said life. A Spectre kills quickly and mercilessly, for only by depriving others of life can it gain the slightest satisfaction. However, no matter how many lives it extinguishes, a Spectre always succumbs to its hatred and sorrow. Sunlight represents a source of life that no Spectre can ever hope to douse, and it pains them. When night falls, they leave their final resting places in search of a living creature to slay, knowing that few weapons can harm them in return. At the first light of dawn, they retreat back into the darkness, where they remain until night falls again. Okay, so in your monster manual, there are a couple examples here. There's the Spectre, and then the variant would be a poltergeist. A poltergeist is a different kind of Spectre, the confused, invisible spirit of an individual with no sense of how he or she died. A poltergeist expresses its rage by hurling creatures and objects using the power of its shattered psyche. It's considered a challenge rating of 2 and gains the following additional trait: invisibility, and then it has forceful slam, and it has telekinetic thrust. So a Spectre or a poltergeist, I would say, offer you a little bit more narrative potential than just using like a skeleton or a zombie. And when I mean narrative potential, this is in the sense of thinking about our monsters, thinking about why we're using them and how to build stories with them and integrate them, or even build a story around it. So let's start this October off with these little guys, and let's think about how we can use them. So I think immediately of things that I know that involve specters and poltergeists, and I'm sure you do too. For example, a movie called Poltergeist. You could think about these lonely, sad spirits who are filled with rage when they're reminded of the life that they were robbed from which they were robbed of, from whatever. You get what I'm saying. The idea is that you could actually take this as a seed for an adventure, and it could be a short adventure or a longer term adventure. You can tie this into a nice beginning level thing. Okay, so any group of adventurers could be moving along through wherever they are at low level, and I mean truly wherever they are. You could have this set in, European setting in any season, summer, fall, winter, spring. They're moving through the wilds, they're going through a small village, they're going past a farmhouse, they're in the woods, they're in the north, maybe they're in the frozen north and they come across a small northern village, or even out in the desert, or on a jungle, or an island, or a Mediterranean setting. Doesn't really matter, right? The point is that your party comes through an area. and that area has been haunted. This is your basic hook, right? Your basic hook. Now, you might be like, Bill, I don't want to prepare a whole adventure and then have the characters be like, this place is haunted, we're out, and they just leave. Of course, and nobody wants that, but at the same time, you don't want to railroad them. So how do we get a party to be invested in solving the mystery of the haunting and ultimately helping the specter or poltergeist to be obliterated so that they aren't a bother to the people in the area? Well, one way would be to directly attack them, right? So the specter comes out, it attacks the party, and then it runs away. Or the poltergeist comes out, it does something to the party, it runs away. I could also say maybe a sort of angry ambush on the party, right? So maybe the poltergeist destroys their wagon or does a forceful slam and, breaks the bones of several of the horses, which strands the party in this place. Another mechanism that isn't directly tied to either the poltergeist or the specter could be a weather event. How often, as a DM, have you actually used the weather to help drive the narrative? Because if you haven't, this is your chance, man. No matter where it's set. It could be a snowstorm, a blizzard that traps the people there in this small town, and the party is there, and then they're in this place where people gradually go missing as the blizzard snows everybody in, and nobody knows what's happening. It could be a massive, rain season, typhoon, tsunami kind of situation, monsoon. It could be a sandstorm if it's in the desert, right? But one way or the other, you have a weather event that keeps the party stranded in this location. Now, again, you might be like, well, Billy, you're railroading them. Okay, maybe I am. But they're not quite railroaded because they will still have choices. And here's what I mean. How they choose to deal with the specter or the poltergeist is an opportunity for some narrative role-playing elements to take place and some choices by the players. Maybe they want to investigate. Maybe they start to get clues that this is a haunting and that they want to start to find out why. If they are role players and they're interested in investigation, or maybe they come up with a way to figure out the backstory and they find out that the specter or the poltergeist was actually once a respected lord or lady in the town, or it doesn't have to be nobility. It could even be like a commoner, but somebody who was really respected in the town. And in their investigations, and whether that's socially by interacting with the other townsfolk, or by actually researching, and they like go to the noble's library and they find this journal, one way or the other, they start to find out that the specter or poltergeist who's haunting this village is actually a victim of a much greater evil. And that much greater evil you can think about as a story seed for later on in your campaign at higher levels. Even here in the Monster Manual, they mention how one of these creatures is made. When a wraith rips a soul from a living body. So maybe a wraith was the perpetrator behind what happened here, creating these specters and poltergeists. And that could lead to them questioning who that wraith was, or who that wraith is, and where are they now. That could lead to other adventures. So you're simultaneously creating an encounter that could become an adventure, but you don't have to plan out all the details. You just have to model it after any kind of modern murder mystery or any horror movie where people go missing and you don't know. The unknown, that's the component that you have to play with here from the narrative. It's the fear of the unknown. You don't know why these people are going missing. You don't know where they are, but they're going missing. And sooner or later, the party's going to start going missing as well. So you could play with this concept. Now, how do you mechanically use a specter or a poltergeist in your campaign and your encounters? And can you make this more than a challenge rating one thing? Of course, if you've been watching Monster Monday, my answer is yes. You can always scale things up or down. Let's take a look at the specter. Armor class of 12, hit points of 22, damage resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical weapons. At low level, it's not likely that your party is going to have magical weapons. And since they're resistant to acid, cold, fire, lightning, and thunder, that doesn't leave a lot of options. Now, it does leave psychic damage. So magical effects that cause psychic damage or radiant damage would be great. Yeah? They are undead. So if you have a cleric or someone capable of using turn undead in the party, that could be another option. But rather than that just being like, I turn undead, and you make a die roll, have the player describe what they're saying. Have them describe the invocation, the divine mandate, you know, the power of Christ compels you kind of thing. Like, have them describe that in the storyline. And then have them make the roll secretly, or you make the roll for them. Now, why would you do that? You're maybe asking, Bill, why? Because you don't know if they succeeded or not, and the player doesn't necessarily know if they succeeded or not. Why am I saying that? Because they have certain effects. The poltergeist can be invisible, the specter has incorporeal movement. So they might do their turn undead. If it succeeds, it succeeds. If it doesn't succeed, maybe the specter disappears into the ground, and the party thinks that they succeeded. Or maybe the poltergeist turns invisible. The party thinks they succeeded, but they didn't. And they find that out later in that session. That's why I say make that turn undead roll. First of all, have the player explain, like role play what their character says when they do turn undead. Turn undead is really a very powerful, dramatic thing that a player can do. So it shouldn't just be like, like a combat thing where it's like, I hit it with my axe, roll. Okay, describe what you're saying. It'll make it more immersive for the rest of the group. It'll make that player who's doing the turn undead feel like they're in the spotlight. And that's an important thing. So as a DM, I would encourage you to do that. As I said, they have condition immunities and damage immunities as well. Damage immunities to necrotic and poison, condition immunities to being charmed, exhausted, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, and unconscious. So even though they don't have a ton of hit points, it's hard to do damage to these things. They'll have to get creative. The party will have to get creative. If you have a party that's like a group of mostly non-spellcasters, they're going to have a real challenge with this. And that is where you have a narrative opportunity. Maybe they could socially interact with it. Now, the default of the Spectre is kill, 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 right? But say somebody is a social skilled, high charisma kind of player in the group, maybe they can bargain with the Spectre. Maybe they can try to like calm it down or find out more about it and try to help it be redeemed. You know, so when I say that it's not really railroading, that's what I mean. You're not telling the party, you're not putting them in a position where you set it up that they're trapped and then they have to fight a specter or have to fight a poltergeist. They don't have to. There are a lot of different ways they can resolve that, and that is all player agency. That's all player choice. So it's not really railroading. It's just setting up a story, putting them in a position where they have to be invested. Could you add more story hooks? Absolutely. Maybe the specter or the poltergeist is a little girl ghost, and she's furious and she has powers, right? But they're able to negotiate with her. Or maybe they start talking to the townsfolk and they say like, we've seen the ghost, we've seen the specter, it's a little girl. And the people in the town would be like, what did she look like? And then they describe the ghost and then like they're like murmur, 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 whispering amongst them. And the party's like, what do you know? And they're like, that sounds like little Amelia. She was the daughter of Jezebiah and Helena. They were a family, a happy family, whose their daughter disappeared one night and she never returned, and they've fallen into a Great Depression and melancholy, So you can integrate more story to it if you need to. Those are just some ideas, but ultimately the Spectre or the Poltergeist are a great low-level addition to make for a cool session. Are they like really going to be an ongoing thing? They could be. That's where it goes back to that whole wraith. Maybe this wraith has been moving through towns, just harvesting, ripping souls out, and creating chaos and disorder and, overall haunted areas throughout the region. Why? That's up to you. I mean, for me, I could think of it as like, well, you know, when people are terrified all the time, everywhere you go, and there's always haunted, freaky, supernatural things going on, that creates like a gloomy environment, right? And maybe that's what this wraith wants. Maybe this wraith wants to rule over this land, you know? Or maybe the wraith is just ushering in an even greater undead power. Think like, you know, Strahd Barovia kind of level of thing. Who knows? So the Spectre, though, even at challenge rating 1, is pretty amazing because it's so hard to hurt, injure, or otherwise eliminate. It has incorporeal movement, so it can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. It takes 1d10 force damage if it ends its turn inside an object. Maybe the party gets smart and they chase after this thing and force it inside of an object, or they move an object to where the thing's going to do damage against it. That's kind of a cool defensive/offensive strategy. They also have sunlight sensitivity. Maybe they're, you know, they pull the old like, we'll get mirrors and open up all the windows and beam it with sunlight. You know, there's another example. All right, the actions on this thing are fierce. The Spectre is capable of doing Life Drain, which is a melee spell attack, +4 to hit, reach of 5 feet. It affects one creature, doing 3d6 necrotic damage. The target must succeed on a DC 10 con save, or its hit point maximum is reduced by an amount equal to the damage taken. This reduction lasts until the creature finishes a long rest. The target dies if this effect reduces its hit point maximum to 0. Remember when I said this would be a good low-level encounter? Maybe ease off of that. If you're using this like at 3rd level with an experienced party, I think it's okay. But like, I wouldn't necessarily throw a Spectre at a party of 1st level newbies, because they'll die. Most likely, they'll die. Unless you scale it down and give it like 10 hit points and make its life drain only do 1d6 instead of 3d6. Now, conversely, let's say you want to use a Spectre or a Poltergeist. You're not quite ready to scale it up to a Ghost. On a party of mid-level people, 4th, 5th, 6th level, you could easily throw a couple Spectres or Poltergeists into the mix, bump them up on the hit points, and make their damage a little higher, and now they're a significant challenge for a mid-level party. Just real quick, I wanted to take a look at the Poltergeist. So, as I mentioned before, they can turn invisible. The Poltergeist has the following action options in place of the Spectre's life drain. They could do Forceful Slam, which is +4 to hit. It does 3d6 force damage. Telekinetic Thrust. The Poltergeist targets a creature or unattended object within 30 feet of it. A creature must be medium or smaller to be affected by this magic, and an object can weigh up to 150 pounds. If the target is a creature, the Poltergeist makes a charisma check contested by the target's strength check. If the Poltergeist wins the contest, the Poltergeist hurls the target up to 30 feet in any direction, including upward. If the target then comes into contact with a hard surface, the target takes 1d6 damage per 10 feet moved. If the target is an object that isn't being worn or carried, the Poltergeist hurls it up to 30 feet in any direction. The Poltergeist can use the object as a ranged weapon, attacking one creature along the object's path, +4 to hit, and dealing 2d4 bludgeoning damage. Oh, see, to me that's much more fun than Life Drain. The whole premise with these, and some of the other Monster Mondays I'll be doing, comes back to fear. Fear of the unknown. So as a DM, you do not want to immediately reveal what this is. Don't ever say, like, you see a poltergeist or you see a specter, especially if you have a party of players who are experienced, who maybe have DM'd sessions, who maybe know the stats of these things. Always change it up. Keep that element of fear of the unknown going. Throw some surprises at them. Use telekinetic thrust to move things around, to have doors or windows slam shut, to have a bunch of stuff knocked off the counter, to have the torches blown out. All of those things are really cool, haunting effects. And if you need more ideas, just go watch some horror movies. It's October. Go watch Poltergeist. So those are all really cool things that you could do with just these starter ghosts. The Spectre and the Poltergeist have lots of potential. Could you have two of them in the same location? Absolutely. Why not? Maybe that Wraith went through there and made a whole mess. Ripped out a whole bunch of souls, right? And maybe is still there. So at higher level, maybe your higher level party gets to this town and they start encountering all this weird haunting stuff. And initially it's poltergeists and specters, but then it's ghosts. And after that, it's wraiths. You can have a whole town of the undead spooky-tacular. So remember that the fear of the unknown is a psychological tool to make your games a little more immersive for your players and to make them a little more challenging for the characters in the party to have to think beyond just, I hit it with my axe. To have to role play beyond just, I rolled to turn undead. Have them describe those things. Have them talk about how they're solving the problems. But this is just the beginning because we got a lot of time left in October. So I hope this has been helpful or informative for you. And if you have any great encounters that you've done as a DM using specters or poltergeists, or as a player, any great fun adventures that you had involving encountering these guys, please share in the comments below. We'll see you next time. Keep it spooky.
Hello, it's me, Wizzy. I'm back once again to remind you to subscribe and click on the notifications button, and also watch videos that are over there. And then don't forget to tune in to the next episode of whatever show you are just watching, and crafting videos and DM tips and pro tips for vlogging and all sorts of gaming things. And also you could watch Bill eat food and watch other shows featuring Bill. He made me say that because he's a narcissist. Okay, bye.